This is going to be an exciting new update. We'll talk a bit more about this display when we actually have it come out 100%, but it's pretty much right now MPI, which means it will be coming to the market. So the exciting thing about this actually display is I think that for those of you that are going to be looking for, I think, a monitor that's of course a lot less expensive. This is coming at $300. Maybe you're still at 1080p, you haven't upgraded to 1440p. Maybe you've got a monitor from a few years ago. Maybe it's not high refresh rate. Maybe it's an older kind of very first gen VA or maybe first gen IPS. So you're looking for something with a brighter display. You're looking for better color gamut. You're looking for refresh rate, variable overdrive performance. I'm a really big fan of this display. This is going to be the XG27ACS. So this is going to be a 1440p display. 180 hertz, fast IPS-based panel, has USB-C, a revised ID design, which I think is really clean, really refined, and minimal. I like a lot of the proponents on it in terms of kind of its core feature set and its corresponding price point. At $299, I think it's going to be one of the best value options that we have available for a 1440p display. So some other cool things that you'll actually see in relation to this monitor will be the down here, if you actually take a look, it actually has an integrated little holder for something like your smartphone. So if you want to be able to put your smartphone or maybe something like a tablet, you can do that. That's pretty cool. As always, when we talk about new product announcements, generally your timeline in terms of availability will usually be up to about 30 days, depending on the logistics for the corresponding channel partner. But again, as a recap right here, you're going to see 27 inches, so 1440p, 180 hertz, 1 millisecond gray to gray. Keep in mind that's your peak. Overall, the resident average will be, of course, higher than that, but as a general representation target, quite good. Of course, that faster IPS means it's going to be quite solid in terms of the performance and what you would also get with that modern panel, which are generally going to be a higher level of color gamut performance. USB-C connectivity, GSYNC compatibility, the display widget center, which we've talked about, gives you all that management options inside of the OSD. The tripod mount, which is great in terms of just being able to give you that ability to mount a camera, microphone, or light, all built in there. And you also do get ULME sync, so that means that this unit does also support essentially backlight strobing and can run the backlight strobing in conjunction with essentially adaptive sync. So normally those are exclusive. We were actually the first vendor to be able to implement that on the market, so pretty cool to be able to offer that there. Here you can see a little example of how you can mount your phone in there if you want to be able to dock it into place. And of course, with that USB-C, it's nice to either be able to output that support there for charging purposes if you wanted to be able to have that present, right? Now this model, we didn't talk about it actually on the PG32UCDM, but they also integrate the new dynamic crosshair and the dynamic shadow boost. So shadow boost is something that we've had for years on our displays. A lot of people utilize it to boost up the shadow detail within certain types of maps, certain types of games, especially darker kind of FPS. With dynamic shadow boost, there's a little bit of kind of more intelligence that's going on, kind of AI based, where it will kind of in specific areas help to brighten up that darker values, but not necessarily overexpose those brighter areas, right? And that can very much be the game where you have maybe a little bit of light penetration, maybe a little bit of something off angle in somewhere other space, and it's going to be darker, but in just a little bit kind of adjacent to that is already too bright, and you wouldn't want to expose that. And so sometimes with shadow boost, you would get maybe a little bit too much of an overall uplift. And so with the dynamic shadow boost, it does a really good job to be essentially much more granular and targeted within certain spaces. So that is an introduction that you will also see here. When you see, of course, that color gamut performance, that DCI-P3 at 97% and the sRGB at 133%, very nice. So you're going to get that really nice, punchy, great color performance on here. So very, very happy to see that. Again, I think at this corresponding price point, this is going to be a great option for a lot of users. Very reasonable in terms of the overall kind of price to performance to the feature set. So we essentially had a very similar display to this with the Tough Gaming model, which comes in pretty close to this, but it didn't give you essentially, you know, the little phone dock right here. It didn't have Type-C connectivity on there. It didn't have the dynamic shadow boost technology. So I think there's a lot of really cool things that this display is going to be offering at this price point. So this is, I think, a great addition to our lineup here. Let's go ahead and check there. All right, so next up, let's go into our next product. Next product is going to be right here is the ROG Strix Impact 3 wireless. So this is actually a great addition that I'm really excited about. For those of you who might be maybe looking for a more kind of symmetrically designed type mouse. So if maybe you're looking for something on this side of the fence, let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. Okay. So here you guys go. This is going to be the ROG Strix Impact 3. This is a great update. One of my favorite mice that we had previously in our lineup. So this is Going to be great for those of you who want more of a symmetrical based design. I generally favor kind of an ergo design. That's just because I have bigger hands, so it just tends to be more comfortable for me. But this will be a more symmetrical based body. This will be a tri-mode based mouse, so it's going to be, of course, giving you essentially Bluetooth, USB-C, and essentially 2.4 gigahertz wireless. Now, in terms of actually the 2.4 gigahertz wireless, this will be our new SpeedNova based chipset, which is the same we're using in the ROG Harp, the upcoming Kerris 2. Essentially, that just means ultra gaming grade wireless. So with the SpeedNova based chipset, our target is actually not to even operate at 1 millisecond, but actually sub 1 millisecond, generally within a target range of about 0.9 millisecond. It's really industry leading in terms of its overall performance. Some of you guys in the past, we've shown actually some very interesting technical data where when you actually measure polling rate stability for our wireless implementation, the actual battery life performance, all of these really we find that actually are really offering class leading performance in this respect. So it's not just a pure kind of marketing point, especially if you want to be able to utilize our Omni receiver. So our Omni receiver actually allows for simultaneous connection between the mouse and the keyboard. There is a big advantage that ASUS offers compared to other companies. Some companies can offer a significantly noted negative impact when it comes to actually polling rate performance, whether it's on the mouse or the keyboard, because ultimately it's physics. As you're sending more data across those data packets, those data channels, it becomes much more challenging to ensure low latency performance and polling rate stability for both of those devices. So we've had to work very, very closely on in terms of our encoding scheme, of course, chipset optimization, a lot of those things to be able to give you very, very good performance, but you can feel confident in that respect if you want to go that route. Of course, and if you don't, and you use a separate keyboard or a separate mouse corresponding in that ecosystem, you're entirely fine. But if you use that Omni receiver design function, that means one adapter for essentially both of the devices, you can still get a great level of performance. Now, one of the things that I really also love about this design, and something that we've talked about in our prior streams, is going to be this supports our push fit hot socket design. That means that you're going to have the flexibility that if you want to change out the switches, so you want to go with a kind of a more clicky switch, a more crispy switch, one that has a different level of kind of actuation performance, whether it's softer, whether it's harder, or even a silent switch. I have one of my mice that I've actually modded with a Kale silent switch, which can be used in some mice. I put that in there, and essentially I have a pure silent switch, so you don't even hear the mouse at all. I like that design, but you have a lot of flexibility. This model has also been upgraded though to incorporate our ROG micro switches, which with our ROG micro switches, if you guys haven't seen it, let me see if I have an image here of our ROG micro switch. Yeah, so here we go. So if you actually take a look, this is the inside of when I talked about this originally for our Gladius 3 launch, where we had the ROG micro switch. So you'll see this is the inside where we've disassembled the actual ROG micro switch, and you can see this gold-plated electrode junction. So normally over time, this actually junction right here can get oxidized, and that actually what leads to sometimes debounce, delay processing issues, where that can actually lead to things like double clicking. The great thing is with our mouse is traditionally most mice, the switches are going to be always soldered, so you're kind of stuck unless you know how to solder and you have a soldering iron. You're going to be just problematically stuck with something where you're not going to get a great experience. These are not only designed to mitigate that, but if you ever did have an issue, the great thing is with our design, I don't have this. Do I have a mouse that's disassembled? Ooh, I have this one disassembled. So again, you guys can watch a live stream that we've already talked about this in the past, but you can see right here, it's as simple as literally once you remove 2 screws, you open up the shell of the body, bam, right there. If I wanted to be able to take my switch out, I can take my switch out and I can swap it. And again, you can pick all kinds of switches. These are our ROG micro switches, which I think they actually also look really cool. I didn't show you how they look, but they even have a really cool little transparent design right there. You can see here was a little kind of box that I had with all kinds of switches, but you can get TTC, you can get Kale, you can get Cherry, you can get Hawano, tons of different types of switches. They usually cost you a few dollars. You can get, packs of 3 or 4, whatever, and you can go through kind of hot swapping and customizing. ASUS is the only manufacturer that gives you this level of granularity and control. So it's a really cool feature that we do have available in terms of our switch design. So very, very cool. And let me go back over here. Again, if you take a look at the inside of the mouse, this is the inside of the ROG Strix Impact 3. So you can see right there how you can just pull that switch out, bam, you're good to go, and you can customize that experience. So very, very easy, very, very straightforward. So just rounding out here, the kind of key specifications. This uses our ROG aimpoint sensor, so 36,000 DPI. It's the same ultra high performance sensor you've seen within our flagship series mice like the Gladius 3 and the Harp. That also includes actually industry leading DVI sensitivity, where we're guaranteeing essentially the binning performance of that. So we bin that to ensure very, very consistent performance. Also, our micro switches are binned, and I don't know any other manufacturer that openly discloses that they bin the micro switches. The reason why you want to bin your micro switches is there can actually be gram force deviation tolerance difference between one switch and another switch that happens inherently at the factory. So if, let's say, you had a 10 gram force deviation, that means this side could be like 65 and this side could be 55, and that's entirely normal. And some people think that's quality control. That doesn't have anything to do with quality control. That's just the standard production mechanical deviation. At our factory, though, what we do for the ROG micro switch is we guarantee the switch deviation within plus and minus 5. So that means you get a more consistent tolerance between the left and the right mouse switches. So that's also something else that's there. 2.4 gigahertz along with the Bluetooth mode, SpeedNova based chipset, the Omni receiver design, the push fit socket, the ROG micro switches. For the battery, it is not a rechargeable based battery. You can actually either utilize a AA or a AAA. That's great for long-term reliability and repairability as well to the unit, and onboard memory. So if you want to store profiles on the unit, you can store profiles on the unit. Good to go. For those of you that are, of course, weight hounds and want to be able to know the weight, I'd say it's a reasonable based weight. I still say it's underneath the kind of threshold target that I think would be heavy for me. That is generally, I say, a target rate of under 80 grams. So you can see right here, this is really where you would want to be targeting in. So 68 is going to be with the AAA, and then 72 is going to be with the AA. Okay, so that is going to be the ROG Strix Impact Wireless 3, and I think coming in at a very reasonable price point. The mouse looks really nice and has a similar shape compared to the G Pro Wireless Superlight, which is perfect. Me just curious, will the Impact 3 Wireless come in a white variation down the road? Actually, if you're looking more at the Superlight, what I would recommend would be the ROG Harp, which is even more performant with more features than the Superlight, even is a lighter weight, and that one actually does come in white. So we do have this model, the ROG Harp Ace, and this was actually recently on sale. I don't know if it's in sale right now. It is a little bit more expensive. We had it on sale for $99. It's normally priced at higher. It's about the same exact price as the Superlight, but that comes in white and black. We also have the Gladius 3, which comes in white and black, and we also have the Kerris Aimpoint, which comes in white and black, and then the Kerris 2, which will be coming out later, which is also white and black. But right now, for the Strix 3 Impact, only comes in black. So the next item here is just going to be some new graphics cards. These are just an update. As many of you know, of course, there was updates that came in recently, Resident 2 refreshes for the Super Series. So we've kind of been refreshing those models, right? From the refresh side, we of course have the ROG Strix 47 Ti Super. So this is the ROG Strix version. Again, if you want more specifics, you can ask them right now, but we've covered this in a prior stream as well as posted in a PCDIO group, including differences between like the ROG Strix card and the Tough Gaming graphics card. This includes everything sometimes from like the auxiliary fan connectors to the max TGP power. Actually, it can be very notable, especially for the like the 4070 and the 4080 series, the actual default TGP and then the maximum TGP customization ranges that you have available. But we have the ROG Strix right here that you can see. Now, of course, in the vertical mounting, you have the fixed color scheme, but in the horizontal profile, it's entirely monochrome, so it doesn't tend to compete with any fixed colors within the build. We then are going to have, of course, the dual, which is going to be the 4060 Ti Evo OC edition. That one's coming in at $399. And then we also have the dual 4060 Evo OC edition, which is coming in at $310. As always, some people ask, like, what's the difference between the standard and the OC? There's no difference from a card design, from the PCB, the cooling. All of the design elements are identical between standard and OC models. The OC just comes with a small factory overclock that has been validated, right? So you do generally have the ability to still overclock on top of that. And can you also overclock a standard model to generally OC levels? Yes, but you can't guarantee it. There's always a bit of kind of a marginal difference, and that's the reason why we bin them at the factory, so that we can verify that the unit can actually operate at that frequency with 100% guaranteed stability. But again, you do generally see options that we'll have available for standard and OC, and there you're good to go. So that's just going to be 3 additions that we have in regards to, again, we'll go there with the 4070 Ti on the Strix side, 4060 Ti, and then the 4060. This is going to be kind of our flagship Ergo gaming mouse. So 54 grams, just like our ROG Harp, but it's going to be Ergo tri-mode based. It's going to have our new ROG optical switches that are going to be on here. It has the polling rate booster option as well, which also will be backwards compatible with the ROG Harp. So giving you essentially that 8K wired or 4K wireless support if you're looking for kind of that absolute highest end edge. And again, we talked about 240 hertz monitors today. That's really the sweet spot of where you want to be if you're considering something like 4K or 8K in terms of polling rates for mice. So yeah, this guy will be coming out in the not too distant future in about early Q2 and will be available in white and black. So very excited about this addition to our peripheral lineup. Okay. Somebody asking about this, the ProArt case, a full tower. Yeah, so the PA602, which is going to be this chassis, I can show you guys right here. That is going to be, it would be qualified as a full tower. I'd say it's right on the start of a full tower. It's definitely smaller than some full towers, but it is a kind of a full tower size. Keep in mind that compared to some of the other chassis on the market, it offers quite a bit of space because you have no GPU restrictions limitations. You can fit multiple GPUs in there if you want to go with like 2 ProArt 4080 cards, right? You also have a full top mount support for a 420 millimeter radiator, and also in terms of the front fans, those are 200 by 38 millimeter base fans that come included inside. There's also additional room for, of course, hard drive based storage, as well as 2.5 inch storage, which could be used for a SATA or for U.2, U.3 based SSDs. So this guy is also a fantastic addition, and I gave a little bit of teaser, guys. We have already confirmed that we will also, it's much later, but we will have an actual PA401. So the PA401 would actually be a more compact version of the PA602. So if you're still looking for an ATX based build but more compact, then the PA401 will, I think, be an exciting offering where we'll definitely follow the same kind of key benefits that we've have on the PA602 in terms of ultra high airflow, good serviceability and accessibility with some cool design benefits. So make sure to keep it tuned always to the stream and to the group to find out about those upcoming releases. Okay. Let me bring up some information here on the PG32UCDM. We'll use this as kind of like our baseline as we go over, I think, some of the key information that some of you might be wanting to be aware of. So in terms of the launches I noted, this is going to be for North America, so the US and Canada. So you have gone ahead and seen the confirmed MSRP pricing, which is $12.99 for the PG32UCDM. And in terms of our corresponding launch e-tailer partners, I will drop links in a moment in the chat for those of you who want to double check, but our launch e-tail partners for North America will be Amazon, Newegg, the ASUS Store, and Micro Center. So as of right now, initial availability is going to be most prevalent and most seen at Newegg and the ASUS Store, as well as Micro Center. Micro Center is probably still a little bit in the process of getting those units physically deployed out in terms of store physical availability. The links that we will go ahead and drop will be, though, all active resident to online e-tailer availability. Keep in mind, though, this is a very in-demand product, so if there is an auto notification system, such as what we offer in our ASUS Store as well as on the Newegg Store, you will want to take advantage of it as we have refreshed stock coming inwards. For those of you who are going to be looking towards Amazon, there is still going to be probably a bit out in terms of the time frame for it to be ultimately listed in terms of active inventory, probably somewhere in the range of probably about 3 weeks, so just be mindful of that. And for those of you that are over in Canada that might be wondering about availability, we will be listing initially the PG3UCDM there with Best Buy Canada, so they will be our launch partner in Canada. For those asking about Best Buy in relation to North America or the US, right now Best Buy will not currently be carrying the PG32UCDM. So that is going to be the the 2 applicable sets of e-tailers that we have resident to either the US or for Canada. So first and foremost, right, it's pretty straightforward. This is going to be, of course, hotly anticipated 3rd generation QD panel. So with QD OLED, keep in mind that fundamentally ASUS is actually pretty unique in this respect, that we do offer both QD OLED solutions and WOLED solutions. So WOLED are going to be derived from, of course, LG based panel designs, and then QD OLED are going to be derived from Samsung based panel designs. Now, regardless that us as well as other manufacturers have access to these panels, although currently ASUS is the only manufacturer that has confirmed release of both panels, we will actually be offering a 32-inch 4K offering under QD OLED, as well as actually a 32-inch 4K solution with a WOLED. That'll be coming up a little bit later with the UDCP, but that will similarly be a 4K 240 Hz with an FHD toggle for 480 Hz. Now, in terms of kind of their strengths or their differences, they're both going to be really fantastic options in terms of being able to offer you a truly impressive level of not only contrast, so being able to provide you that really, really dark experience that, of course, OLED is known for, amazing kind of overall dynamic range, ultra low pixel response time, and really the best motion clarity that's available when you talk about a gaming display. That being noted, QD OLED does tend to have a bit of an advantage when you talk about resident color volume and luminance resident to that color volume. If you generally, though, do look at the overall brightness performance, especially with the white subpixel that WOLED implements, it will generally provide you a little bit of a higher level of course, brightness performance. So depending on your use case and your scenario, you may want favor one versus the other. Now, ultimately, when you talk about, I think, SDR and the overall relative kind of color gamut, as well as even wide color gamut, which is generally going to be more applicable for those that want kind of a more punchy image in gaming or maybe interested in HDR gaming. QD OLED will generally offer a higher color gamut level of performance, but the color gamut performance that's already offered right now on WOLED panels, such as, let's say, our current PG34 WCDM, which recently launched, is very good. So it's not a question that you're going to have, I'd say, a notable differential between the two, but it is a measurable differential, and for some people, they may find one more impactful than another, so that is going to be a difference. The last point will be a difference in terms of the inherent panel designs. When we talk about the panel designs, with the LG-based solution, you're going to be looking at a more traditional AR, so anti-reflection matte type of let's say, quote-unquote panel. With the Samsung QD OLED solution, you're going to be looking at more what is referred to as a semi-gloss. There is still an AR component to it, but in terms of reflectivity handling, it's still going to be superior on the WOLED solution. So in that respect, again, you would want to kind of maybe prioritize or pick the panel that you want. We'll be going into a little bit more data as far as what we're talking about for measurement performance for SDR and HDR for those that are interested in kind of performance values. So we'll get in that too a little bit. In addition to that, when we take a look again at the kind of high level specifications, 32 inches, 4K, 240 hertz. Now keep in mind for the 240 hertz, this unit does support variable refresh rate, so it does support GSYNC compatibility as well as AMD FreeSync Premium Pro. So both options are available to you. Currently, I would say the best experience, especially for HDR, is going to be with NVIDIA-based solutions. We are currently continuing to work with AMD to be able to maximize the overall SDR performance, the HDR performance with AMD-based enabled graphics cards, as ASUS does, of course, produce both AMD-based graphics card solutions and NVIDIA graphics card-based solutions. The custom heatsink design is, of course, something that we've been known for within our high-end displays and critically helps us to keep the operating temperature of the overall panel at a lower point, helps to maximize its long-term reliability, longevity, and its overall performance. We'll talk a little bit more in a bit about the differential compared to competitors. One of the key things, though, is that we are utilizing a passive solution. There's no active fan here, so it's essentially inaudible and great for long-term reliability. OLED care, we're going to talk a bit more about this because there's a lot that actually goes into the OLED care based feature set, from not only hardware-based designs to firmware to software, and then I think also an extension of our service and support. And we'll talk about our advanced rapid replacement program, how that works, as well as specifically the warranty coverage. But some of you may already be aware that for warranty coverage, we have already confirmed 3-year burn-in protection along with that 3-year warranty for this display. The graphene film goes alongside with the custom heatsink design to be able to go ahead and help to mitigate essentially thermal ramping, essentially helping to keep the display at a lower temperature, which is beneficial. Of course, that outstanding performance, 99% DCI-P3. Now, in terms of color performance, you'll see right here Delta E and DCI-P3. I'd love to know, and I think we asked this in a prior stream, do you actually calibrate your monitor? We know from a lot of actual surveys that we've done within the community, most users do not calibrate their monitor, but they're hopeful that they want to get a monitor that's really color accurate. One of the great things that we do is, of course, we factory calibrate all ROG-based displays. And for our latest generation of OLED-based monitors, as well as for HDR, we went back and retuned the entirety of essentially that calibration process, which was quite complex. There's a lot more complex nuances to the way that OLED panels work, as well as HDR. But we're very, very happy to be able to report that the experience in terms of what we're seeing from the actual revision to the calibration process has really yielded an outstanding level of out-of-box color accuracy and performance. So I think that for users that just want a simple option to be able to go into the monitor, go into our sRGB calibration mode, you can have a great experience without having to know how to tailor or tune anything. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the tuning parameters, because also another area ASUS we are priding ourselves right now is we've listened to the community, and for already a while we've offered what's called an unclamped mode, which means that if you want to be able to make adjustments even after you define the sRGB mode, which would be favorable with an SDR operation, so not getting into HDR gaming, you will still be able to have access to a lot of parameters for adjustment, including brightness. Dolby Vision support will be coming within a forthcoming firmware update, as well as, of course, you have HDR10 based support there. Uniform brightness, which is going to be fantastic for normal desktop productivity, where you have a toggle option to be able to essentially cap the brightness, but essentially mitigate that kind of up and down effect that you might have when you're kind of going from one application, or you're going from a very white, bright kind of a scenario to a much darker type scenario. And you can see that capping coming into place with the automatic brightness limiter, which was traditionally something that you would have to work against, right? Display Widget Center, we'll talk a little bit more, but that's our software suite, which allows you to access a lot of the controls that normally would be hidden inside of the physical OSD display. Very excited to be the first manufacturer that are offering ELMB or BFI, and we'll talk about some of the benefits for BFI and why you might want to use BFI in a bit. So I think the next one is going to be here. If we take a look at this, is going to be some of the respective differences. So first and foremost, you'll find that we're utilizing, of course, a flat panel. Now, this is subjective, but I think that for 32 inches at 4K, which really kind of is a hybrid resolution, where I'm a gamer that loves absolutely open world environments, immersive kind of racing, simulation, also FPS, right? A bit of everything, but also love the 32-inch form factor for desktop productivity, where I have multiple monitors and things like that. And I think that for a hybrid use case, I think flat is going to be preferred as to curve. We, of course, have different types of offerings, including curve-based monitors, which can be great if you want to have maybe a little bit more immersion. Now, the competitor is offering a more kind of subtle curve, so it's not a super aggressive curve, but we are offering a flat. So if you prefer a flat, that is going to be an advantage, I would say, with us. Another benefit would be our cooling design is that it's going to be a fully passive-based design. So that means that in terms of long-term reliability, there's no fan or bearing to potentially kind of wear out or fail. Also, kind of dust, debris, and damage that sometimes can settle in within that. That could also be a factor. And ultimately, from a noise perspective, there's no tuning that you have to do or set it to like low, medium, or high. It's essentially not going to produce any noise because it is a passive cooling design. The KVM functionality we also have integrated, which I think, again, is great for hybrid-based use. Apologies there for the typo there, but hybrid-based use, essentially just giving you a easier experience if you want to be able to use something like an external secondary system. You have that functionality with us. Also keep in mind that our KVM does support picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture support to be able to integrate within that, so that's a nice benefit as well. Both monitors do support high-speed USB 3, but we are offering USB 3.2 Gen 2 support. So that is going to be essentially 10 gigabits versus your 5 gigabits. So it is going to be a faster level of throughput that will be available to you. Additionally, we do also offer USB-C, which is not offered on the competitor, with not only USB PD support and DisplayPort, but both. So that means that you can have this connected to, let's say, a laptop, have that, or have another device that has essentially USB alt display support and be sending that into your system, which could actually include also a secondary PC system or a Mac. Maybe you have like something like a MacBook, right? And you also have a desktop system. You could actually use both, and that's great. We do support up to 90 watts power delivery. By default, we do recommend the 65 watt power delivery, which is still more than enough to be able to still charge a device and utilize that device, but it will not limit any of the performance for the panel. If you do go up to the maximum mode, which generally I think would probably be most useful if maybe you're walking away, maybe you're doing lunch or something like that, and you want to get the most charging support or whatnot, you will be limiting certain functionality for the display. So do be mindful of that, but you do still have USB-C, which the other model does not have. Optical SPDIF output along with 3.5 millimeter output is also present on our display. This is something that some of you may not utilize at all, but definitely a lot of the console gamers generally do find. There are some people in the streamer crowds as well that do appreciate this, depending on kind of their audio systems and setups. So again, we do have optical output and 3.5 millimeter output built into our display. There's more aspect ratio support as well built into our display, where we have options for that 24.5 and 27. So kind of a little bit more kind of, let's say, FPS or kind of esports centered aspect ratios, along with a 4:3 aspect ratio. This can be very advantageous for different types of kind of comfort field of view type of scenarios, certain types of games. So again, I think giving you more flexibility to define the operating experience that is going to work best for you. We also do, of course, have exclusively right now our ELMB or extreme low motion blur, essentially backflame insertion, so BFI. So the big benefit, and some people wonder is, well, how does the BFI ultimately work? Well, with BFI, for one, you will have a reduction in terms of your brightness, right? It's going to be around, let's say, 100 in terms of the overall luminance target, right, that would be available to you. So it's definitely going to be dimmer, but it still will provide to you an effective almost motion clarity performance of 240 hertz. So this is important because we're talking about a 4K monitor, right? And so if you talk about the game that you might be playing, you might not be able to actually render it at consistently 240 frames a second, right? Now you do have GSYNC and you have FreeSync, so of course you have that variable refresh rate to help to mitigate any type of kind of tearing, but having the flexibility that if you can sustain 120 frames a second at 4K, which is much more reasonable than 4K at 240 hertz, which could definitely be very challenging depending on the game. This is going to be, I think, an advantage that we can offer you, where you can essentially have about the same motion clarity performance. This, I think, will be most useful, again, for certain types of games, maybe some older systems that can't have as much, of course, FPS rendering performance, and also consoles, where, of course, consoles, they're going to be limited at best to be able to do, of course, that 220 frames a second, 120 hertz support. So that's where I think eLMB comes in. So again, it's nice to just be able to have that as an option. The UBL, or the Uniform Brightness Limiter, that's going to be, again, a great option that we also offer here to be able to give you a more consistent, end user desktop experience, right? So if you're opening your browser, jumping into email, going into a video, right, and you're going to go from bright to dark to bright, right, whatever it might be, you can just cap that out and have it be a much more consistent experience. The other one is going to be here, a threaded mount. So the threaded mount, I'll show you an image of it here in a moment. If you want to be able to connect something like a camera, a microphone, or a light, that is an easy accessory that you don't have to have something else for. It can mount directly onto the display. So that also gives you another benefit that you have available to you. Now, one other one that's actually a little bit harder to see, and it's not noted there in kind of my quick kind of comparison chart, will also be is that our display doesn't integrate the power adapter inside of the monitor. We do utilize an external power adapter. So that AC adapter is externally, and then you plug into the display. One of the design benefits of that can actually be just overall kind of repairability or serviceability to the product. When you talk about potential points of failure, things like a brownout, a surge, or a sag, it can be realistically something that can affect your actual power adapter. By having it be fully integrated within the monitor, if that was to fail, you do have to actually replace the entire monitor, send the monitor in for service and support. With our design, if the power adapter were to fail, you can keep your monitor, not have to sending it, don't have to pull it all out. You just disconnect the power adapter and we can replace the power adapter. So it actually does allow, I think, for a more seamless serviceability to the product. Something that's kind of maybe not easy to recognize, but once you're kind of aware of that, you can definitely see the value proposition of not having it in there. I will also say that while the housings, there is a difference in terms of the aesthetic design, we do use a metal actually layering to the external casing, which one I think it feels a little bit more premium. It's also going to be thinner, but even actually when you reach around the panel to make an adjustment to it, I think is actually a little bit easier to hold and make your adjustment. So especially if you're going to kind of swivel the monitor and make an adjustments there, as opposed to having a more kind of bulbous round kind of cover that's plastic, it's a little bit more slick. I think that this actually is a little bit nicer to hold. Again, that's a very subjective, subtle item, but I think that in totality with the rest of everything allows you to see that there's quite a bit of notable differences between the two monitors. Okay. All right. So give me 1 second here. All right. Let's see if we got any other questions that might have come up there. So keep in mind that, so when you talk about kind of DSC or kind of HDMI 2.1, that is another kind of benefit that we do offer. With a competitor solution, as to our knowledge right now, you can't actually disable DSC. Now, in most situations, you would want to utilize DSC. This also gives you the most interoperability and compatibility for different types of devices, because currently only the absolute latest generation of products have actually enabled HDMI 2.1 support. So next here, I want to talk a little bit about the software experience, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the warranty. So when we talk about, of course, the warranty, if you're not aware, what we did do for this this specific model is actually upgrade the warranty to a 3-year warranty, which also includes burn-in protection. Now we also will offer what we call our ARR. So ARR is something that we've already offered on all of our LCDs. All of our LCDs have actually offered a 3-year warranty with ARR support. ARR essentially just means advanced rapid replacement. So in the event that you actually have an issue that qualifies for warranty coverage, you would contact our service and support team and arrange for the actual monitor RMA. For an advanced rapid replacement, will essentially help to coordinate that, assuming we actually have, of course, the product in hand, and we can facilitate that process. We'll then actually email you the corresponding label. You'll get your actual box, and you would then go ahead and ship things back. So this actually allows you to just have a reduced level of downtime in terms of getting your replacement and then sending the other unit back. Now keep in mind, because of course it's contingent on you sending your unit back, you do have to place a credit card on file with us. This is normal for any type of advanced rapid type of replacement in the industry. So this is not an ASUS kind of anomaly in regards to the execution. And if you don't proceed to do that, you can of course go through a traditional RMA, which would mean of course you would send the product first into us, and then we would go through assessment and then send you the replacement, or we would repair the unit and send you back the unit with repairs, right? Assuming on whatever is assessed as relative to the warranty coverage. So pretty straightforward. In addition to that, I also do want to note that outside of your traditional burn-in warranty coverage, we also do have an openly disclosed bright dot and dark dot pixel policy. Some manufacturers currently on the market do not have this coverage in place, so they're not clear in terms of whether or not they will warrant bright dot or dark dot coverage. So if you do actually check on a corresponding model, it will vary between different models. So keep in mind, again, if you're looking at LCDs, there could be difference. But you can see right here that we do have this broken down to clearly stipulate what we will cover. So under the bright dot or dark dot warranty, essentially you can see here within that 36-month period, 3 and 5. So very clear to know whether or not it will be covered or won't be covered. Again, some other manufacturers don't have an open disclosure, so it is a bit of a gray area on whether or not there's clear coverage resident to bright dot or dark dot. While there's a lot of focus on burn-in, again, there's a lot of preventative technologies that are inherent either to the new generation of the QD OLED panel itself, as well as things like the custom heatsink design, the graphene film material, and then of course preventative design implementations, which we're going to talk about in a moment here. One of the cool actually preventative design implementations that I haven't really seen people many notice is there is actually a human presence sensor also on the monitor. So that essentially means that if it notices that nobody's there in front of the display, it will dim the display, and after actually a period of time, it'll actually put the display into sleep. So this is on top of essentially a lot of the other safeguards that we put in place when it comes to protection. So of course, the great thing about the Display Widget Center software is you have full accessibility within Windows. So that means if you want to be able to make adjustments to things like your brightness, your contrast, you can do that. You can change from things like sRGB mode to scenery mode to cinema mode. You can do that all dynamically on the fly. You don't ever have to physically touch a button. The cool part though, there is also additional elements that we bake in that are normally reserved in the firmware. Now, I do state that you have them available in the firmware as well as in with the software. So the important reason why I stipulate that is maybe you happen to be, I don't know, an Apple user, or maybe you happen to be a Linux user and you still want to be able to leverage essentially the OLED protection mechanisms, right? Those are still available to you within the on-screen display, but you would have to go, of course, into the on-screen display to be able to access them and be able to enable them. But if you don't, and like I said, you're on the PC side and you want the easier experience, the software is great. So we think that that's a great level of functionality. We are also working on a future build update that will support OS X in terms of Apple-based users, but that won't be for some time in terms of actually that Display Widget Center version, but it is something that we do have in terms of our roadmap for design. So let's go over here and take a look at some of the OLED care parameter options that are available to you. So you will see here that you have the screensaver. The screensaver can again be automatically engaged, and this takes care of actually 3 different operating parameters in terms of safeguarding the display, including things like edge and kind of boundary detection, on automatic adjustment, things along those lines are all compensated for there. You also can see you have adjustment in terms of logo brightness, right? So it'll automatically essentially help to adjust the luminance for those. The uniform brightness limiter option, which you can of course toggle off and on. Target mode, pixel cleaning. You can also set a reminder for pixel cleaning, and then also screen movement, which can be great for not only burn-in, but also actually potentially to reduce the likelihood of image retention. So image retention is a bit different than burn-in. They can kind of ultimately kind of coincide with each other, but they are two different elements. Now, independent of this OLED care option, there's also a screen settings option. Screen setting option actually also has some other items that are cool, which are going to normally be things that you can do yourself, but you may not be aware of needing to do them to help to better safeguard your display. One example will be like your taskbar, which you can see I've got my taskbar here. You would normally want to probably auto hide this on an OLED design, just to, again, kind of have a little bit more kind of foresight in terms of long-term reliability and reducing the likelihood for image retention and for burn-in. So we have even options like that, that instead of you having to kind of research them or find them or how do I actually make those adjustments, you can just go in there and you can again toggle those. So independent of the firmware based options, we also have options that we've baked in that are inherent within the operating system. So I think when you combine all of that together, you can see that we're offering a very kind of comprehensive level of support, and that's the reason why we refer to it as kind of OLED care, right? We're talking about everything from the warranty itself to the actual design of the product itself, inherent to things like I said, like the graphene film with the heatsink design, and then also other elements, right, in terms of the actual software and the firmware management, to then the service and support and things even like the ARR. So that gives you a pretty kind of comprehensive assessment in terms of what you're getting when you talk about kind of the OLED care experience.
Well, good news today, isn't it? Well, thanks for joining us here on PC Gaming Tech Summary. And don't forget, you'll be seeing me in the next video.